Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the NACDA and Affiliates virtual programming lineup. I'm Dana Leroy, Communications Manager for NACDA, and we are glad to have you with us for this sponsored content session with Derck and Edson. Derck and Edson provides quality planning and design services to shape the natural and built environment in innovative and functional ways. They specialize in enhancing campuses, downtowns, and athletics. Today's session is titled Stepping Up Your Game, 2 Ways to Jumpstart Your Athletics Planning. Our speakers will examine results of 2 athletic planning systems, one focusing on physical enhancements and one focusing on analyzing the repercussions of bringing a new sport to an institution. Steve Sproles, principal at Derck and Edson, will be leading this conversation. We also have 2 campus panelists here to share their experiences. McNelley, athletics director at Eastern University, and Kathie Shafer, Vice President for Operations at Messiah University. Before we officially begin, a quick reminder for our live attendees using Zoom to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window and send in your questions throughout the presentation, as we will have allotted time at the end to answer them. And with that, I'll hand things over to Steve to start the discussion.
Great, thank you very much. I want to kind of get right into what we're going to be talking about today. I'm happy to be joined by Kathie and Eric, and I think their part of our presentation will probably be the most interesting. So I'm going to move through the early part of this agenda fairly quickly. What we want to talk about today, really our goal is to just introduce you to 2 new tools that you might find helpful in regards to your facilities planning and programming. An athletics enhancement plan and a sports business analysis, and I'm going to explain those both in a little bit more detail. And then most importantly, as we get to later on in our presentation, Kathie Shafer is going to be talking about kind of a case study of how they've used the athletics enhancement plan for Messiah College. And Eric will be doing the same thing on the sports business analysis at Eastern. So I'm going to get right into that. A little bit about who we are as a firm, just so you know who is kind of leading this conversation today. Derck and Edson is based in Pennsylvania, and we work all over the country. We have a great team of architects and planners, landscape architects and engineers, all in-house, so that we can really meet all the athletic and recreational needs, either inside the buildings or on the outdoor venues. Our focus is really campuses and athletics. Probably 60 to 70% of our work each year is focused on one of these 2 markets. We recognize that the best planning can fall short if your idea cannot be conveyed in ways that everybody can understand and get them just as excited about the project as you are. We spend some extra efforts, which hopefully you're going to see in our presentation today, putting together the graphics that really tell the story for the plan. We not only do high-level planning, but we also do the construction drawings that put these projects together. We think it's important as you do planning to understand the systems, materials, products out there in this very unique world. And I think that understanding that makes the planning up front much better. Now let's get into it. What exactly is an athletics enhancement plan, and what makes it different from maybe other planning tools that you've encountered in the past? I'm going to guess that somewhere on your campus you might have facilities that may look something like one of these images. Hopefully not too many of you have coaches in temporary trailers, as the institution does there in the upper right photo. But there's always areas that don't look their best, and pretty soon sometimes you might get so used to it that you walk right past it and begin to accept it as normal. Our goal really in this planning process is to do a number of things. The types of spaces I just shared with you, let's identify them and figure out what we can do to enhance your current facilities. Let's try to engage the right people on your campus to clarify and help put together a vision for the future of the athletics and recreation on your campus. Identify any needs for new facilities and try to determine if it can be a renovation or an addition and where those things might go. And most importantly, and what you'll see as a tool here that we talk about, is prioritizing those. How do we get the biggest bang for our buck, the return on our investment? And ultimately, the big goal is to have a positive impact on recruitment of all students, athletes, and recreational users as well. The enhancement planning process really has 4 steps to it. And I'm going to walk you through each of those steps pretty quickly. But normally it can be done in about 4 months or a semester or over the summer, depending upon your particular schedule. It can be done very quickly, which is very helpful. First, we want to get to have our team get up to speed with you, your team, your facilities, your needs as quickly as possible. We immerse ourselves in your institution through tours, interviews, reviewing previous studies, talking and working with you to identify what the challenges are and what your future needs are. So we get up to speed as quickly as we can. Based on the understanding of those challenges, spaces, and the goals that you have, then we can really quickly start to explore potential solutions. This is a very iterative process. We create potential solutions. You react to them. We would adjust to them. You respond back and forth, because at the end of the day, the solution that's best for your institution, you're going to be an integral part of developing that. Sometimes it's simple fixes, right? It's just, it can be handled with just some curb appeal and some branding. Sometimes those spaces are very easy. I know Eric is going to talk earlier, is redoing his gymnasium right now with new lights, new paint, new branding. It can be a huge difference. But other times the goals might be much grander. This is Alvernia University, and in that particular campus, they had one indoor practice space, and really only one court on the whole campus. And the varsity athletes used it continually. And so there was really no space for intramural or recreational needs of the rest of the student body. And so this field house not only solved that problem, but as well created great practice space for their varsity teams. The community began to use this building and so forth. So some plans can be very grand and others very modest. Once the ideas and the suggestions and the design process has occurred, then we spend time reflecting on those various projects, looking at the solutions, reevaluating them, making sure it's the right answer. And this is when we get into this part of the planning process that might be a little bit different than what you've seen in the past. We've learned over the years that not all projects are created equal. The two examples I just showed you are perfect examples of that. We find it's important to categorize the various projects, and over the past number of years, we've found these three categories work really well. Operational projects or lower cost projects, for example, maybe the painting and branding example I showed you earlier. Capital projects are maybe middle of the road cost projects, something that is probably not going to just be run through your operational budget, but not significant cost. And then of course there's the legacy projects, the new field house or the new track and stadium, or the larger projects that are going to require some serious effort financially, or a donor's name on it, or things of that nature. But if we can categorize them into three different areas, then we can approach them and attack them and make improvements from different funding sources and in different ways, hopefully continually showing improvements within your facilities all the time and not waiting around for the one big project. The other part of this process that's a little unique is what this little matrix that we've created, we call it the priority matrix. So in this particular case, this is a listing of all the legacy projects for an athletics enhancement plan that we did previously, everything from a new 10-lane pool to an indoor track, large legacy name projects. At the end of the day, how do we decide which of these can be the highest priority? And so we've created this little matrix that identifies 4 key areas. The first one everybody wants to know about is, what's it cost? How complex is it? What's the impact and what's the urgency? And we work with you to establish a priority system. These numbers are relative to the others. And as we work with you to fill in these blanks, literally projects start to float to the top. It may be expensive, but it also may be the biggest impact to the student body. And so you all are part of making those decisions, but projects then literally come to the top of this, and those become our higher priority projects. So we would do one of these matrices for the legacy projects, as well as the capital projects. Here you can see some locker room upgrades, some restrooms near the baseball and softball complex, things of that nature. And then operational projects, right? Some branding, some new fencing at softball, storage in some areas. Those are the kinds of projects that typically fall into those lists. So when you're done, you would actually have these priority projects, and you can then work with your administration on finding funding sources for them. And then when you get a couple done one year, you can go to the next year down the list. The other part that's important, the last of these 4 phases, we call the presentation phase. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the best planning in the world can easily never get traction if we can't convey the vision. Obviously, not every project on the list of your enhancement plan is going to get this level of graphics, but for those that rise to the top, getting these extra graphics, putting them together helps you sell your administration, your student body, and donors if necessary. In some cases, we've had institutions where, in addition to just static imagery, they actually wanted to create a movie. This is a brief little segment. This is at Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey. And we're going to talk about new sports analysis here in a minute, but this is a good example of where at FDU they wanted to bring on men's and women's track and field. And so we ended up creating this video to support that, as well as part of their master plan, they wanted to upgrade their baseball stadium from natural grass to synthetic turf, as well as allocating space for a future softball field. So this movie for them was very helpful in making their case to their board, helping them with the fundraising that took place. And we can also go down that route if necessary. So let's talk about the sports business analyst. Now, this is really intended for yourself, want to bring on new sports perhaps to your programs, or maybe the administration's come to you and challenged you as the athletic director to bring on more sports. So what is a proper way to evaluate the cost of that? What's it going to take? How heavy of a lift is it to bring on a new sport? What all is involved? And that's why we've created this analysis. I'm going to talk you through some of these steps because, as you can imagine, and many of you know this, I'm sure, there's a lot of things we have to consider. And part of this process is making sure that we've all asked all of the right questions. And some of this comes down to why are we wanting to bring on new sports? Obviously, different reasons for different institutions. Sometimes it's wanting to modify the diversity profile of your student body or the gender ratio. We had a campus that was finding themselves leaning towards 60% female and 30% male. They wanted to bring on football, not to necessarily bolster enrollment, but to try to work with that gender balance on campus. And so we would go through this process, working with you, following up on all these and trying to answer and define these various components as part of what would be involved in making the decision to bring on a new sport. Obviously, there's a report that would be part of this with a lot of data and a lot of analysis that supports this information. But what we're finding is, many people, specifically administrators, show me the numbers. How much money could we make should we bring on new sports, as many institutions are looking to grow enrollment through athletics? So even this final summary chart, the first year you generally, in most sports, are going to lose some money because you've got to bring on all your upfront costs and coaches in order to recruit your team. But at what year does that return on investment start to go from the red to the black? And that's going to vary depending upon your facilities, the sports team you're considering, and so forth. And as you can imagine, even this simple chart, there's a lot of information that goes on behind it, from the equipment costs to the soft costs necessary to support these kinds of programs. So all of that would be part of these types of reports. And at the end of the day, what we're finding, oftentimes the CFO really likes the idea of someone independently putting this package together so that they can then make the final decisions about the cost of bringing on new sports. So we thought this might be a helpful tool for you if your institution is considering something along those lines. So those are both very high-level summaries of these two tools. What I'm going to do is hand this over to Kathie, and Kathie's going to talk about how the athletic enhancement plan was used and how they implemented that at Messiah College. Kathie?
Thank you, Steve. I lost Steve's volume, so I'm hoping you're all hearing me. Good morning, everyone. Messiah College at the time, now Messiah University, entered an enhancement planning process with Derck and Edson because we were way past an active master plan. And we were looking to address some really growing needs and loud voices within our campus. So we're located in central Pennsylvania. We're an undergraduate student body of right now just under 2,500. Athletics is an important part of who we are, and we have been extremely successful in our athletic program. We have, in the late 90s, had our first individual national championship, and since then we've had 31 national championships. Our men and women's soccer teams are known as powerhouses in the country. 3 different times. They've both been national championships and the champions in the same year. And we're really proud of our student athletes. They really take the role of student and athlete together. But as we went into our planning, we also wanted to think about our rec sports teams, our club teams, and how we engage all of campus in wellness, not just in our sports. And so when you're at a D3 school, sports are an important part of your enrollment plans, but you're also competing for dollars for lots of other things. So for us, while you would think we would have fabulous facilities based on our success, we had limited spaces in aging facilities. And as we go through the plan, I'm going to share how we really took a look at all of our spaces and how we were using them for recreation, classroom, teaching, and athletics to create a plan that would help us. We also were at a time where we knew enrollment needed to grow or was going to be challenging. For most of us, we all challenged hitting numbers. And so we knew coaches were going to be expected to increase their rosters, and we needed to make sure we had space for that. We also know that our athletes come from high schools whose facilities far outshine any of the colleges, particularly in private D3. And we were losing some key athletes because they'd come in and see our gym and be like, "You're kidding me, right? I play in front of 2,000 people," and that. So as we started working on this, we worked on a plan that was inclusive of all campus, not just athletics. So we have a unique campus in that we are situated in 2 counties. That is a challenge for us in some of our work. And our indoor facilities are fairly separated from our exterior facilities. And then we also, what's not shown here, have some areas that are rec sports areas. And we were using this plan to really talk about, do we bring them together? Do we look at building a new field house someplace? Do we move fields around? And the plan helped us really think strategically long-term. So this is an aerial view of what is the largest facility on our campus, Eisenhower Campus Center and Sollenberger Sports Center. It is the home to our sports that are housed inside, so basketball, wrestling, volleyball. And it's a building that started in 1972, and with 5 different additions before this last one was a conglomerate of just spaces, not well connected, not well branded. Getting guests from one spot to another was challenging. So as we did work with Derck and Edson, we looked at what do we need here. And so one of the challenges was that our gym space, if we go to the next slide, in where we had a home court, was really not meeting NCAA regulations. While the court fit in the space, we didn't have enough runoff to the walls. We were limited in capacity for spectators. And so we needed to address that. But we also had a fitness center that was 10 pieces of cardio equipment on an indoor track, and a weight room that maybe 15 or 20 people could use at a time, but not really set up for people to be serious about their training. We also had a pool without spectator seating, and had a couple of years before this plan brought swim on as a competition. And then we had a wrestling team that was at a national level running out of space. We also had a gym that was our home court gym that really was all about events too. So every week we were scheduling hour by hour the use of that and turning it around. And we knew we could not keep up with that. Our rec sports program, students could not get into a gym until 9 o'clock at night. We were running events 24/7 some weeks. So our board worked with us and challenged us on this. So as you see, moving forward, we were able to create in this plan a brand new gym space, a new fitness center space, modify our old rec gym to become our new home court, and add seating to our pool and add space to the wrestling room, along with additional office spaces for coaches. If we move forward here, this was the beginning of selling our story. This rendering had a huge impact on our board. When you entered our campus before we saw this rendering and now the building, you drove into the campus and you saw a long, several hundred feet long brick wall. And you really didn't realize you were at Messiah's campus. You didn't see any sense of campus life. And so Derck and Edson really worked with us to take the footprint of the existing building and a small part of the land around it and add on to the building. So what you see in this picture in the above glass is our new fitness center. So it brings natural light into the fitness center. It looks out onto a beautiful green space. From one view, the other view looks into our pool. We were able to brand and put our name on the windows, but we also designed it in a way to save parking on our campus. And the advantage that they bring to our planning was that they think about campuses holistically, not just athletics. So what does the impact have? We couldn't afford to lose parking. No college campus can. And so they created a fitness center and created a parking garage for us, and then also created a new gym space with 2 courts on it. This rendering helped give a vision to our donors and our board. And in a few pictures, you'll see that it actually looks like this when we were done with construction. So on our outside, we had several challenges. We had a lacrosse team at the time that was using our turf field for field hockey. We all know that hockey players and lacrosse players don't like playing on the same type of turf, and we were having damage there. We have a restroom concession stand that is, well, I'm ready for the sledgehammer is what I tell people. It has 2 stalls on the men's side and 2 stalls on the women's side and a small locker room, and it really doesn't meet the needs. Our soccer attendance in the fall on a weekend can have well over 1,000 people at a game. And so we knew that when we looked at our outside facilities, we needed to look at the conditions of our fields, adding some fields, adding some lighting, and addressing the restroom concession stand process. And so with Derck and Edson, we were able to identify several different projects. One of the key ones that this plan really helped us in fundraising with the pre-planning and imagery was our lacrosse. When I don't even think the plan was finalized 100%, when our development team talked to a potential donor, and with them seeing the vision for this that included at the time a turf field, lighting, and a stadium seating, they actually gave the lead gift, a 90% gift, to start with the turf field. And we were able to fundraise the balance of that pretty quickly and be successful in completing this project. One of the advantages to having a well-defined plan was that we did not have the money for the lights, but we knew the lights were going to go in at some point. So in the infrastructure, Derck and Edson helped us identify where the lights would be, what we would need underground, so that when the field went in, we didn't have to dig up anything later on to put the lights in. And then within almost a year, we were able to raise enough money for the lights. So we have completed 2 parts of that vision pretty quickly. The stadium seating is part of a longer-term plan, but we now have an opportunity for a lacrosse team to have a field. It's designed so that other teams could play on it if we needed to, and it's really helped that program succeed. Here's some images of our indoor space. So this is our new fitness center. You can see the weight areas. When we had an old space, all you had really were what I call universal type equipment. We average just over 55,000 visits a year in our fitness center. And most afternoons between 3 and 5, they can have over 300 people coming and going, and you would not know it. The space is well designed. The weight area is separate from the cardio. It's designed in a way that if you're like me, who just occasionally goes, I'm not intimidated by the elite athlete that's in there. There's a variety of equipment. Derck and Edson helped us think through equipment, not only for the elite athlete, but for the employee and student that just cared about wellness and taking care of themselves. We work to purchase our weight type of equipment, but we're leasing our cardio. So every 3 years, we can assess our needs in there and change out that equipment to better meet the needs of our student body. And then on the other side, you'll see our home court, Jordan Court. This became our competition court. When we looked at our plans for our previous court, the only way to solve that problem, we thought, was to expand the walls. And the operations committee of the board really pushed us to think differently about us and to think about remodeling this room. And this was really built in the early 80s as a cheap gym. The floor was right on concrete, no bleachers, no sound system, minimal lighting. And with the push from the board, we went back and designed this as our new home court. Movable stands, movable baskets, large screen. We can do replay, instant replay. Schools are live streaming, so we can do that. But the board member who also pushed us became so energized by the vision of this, he gave the lead gift and then committed to leading us on a campaign for this project. And I don't think if he hadn't seen this vision, he would have done that. And so Jordan Court has been a real successful. If we were playing right now, we'd be in year 4 of using that space. And on a basketball game, we can fill the whole stadium. We increased our seating by about 50% from what we previously had. And then just the pool area. Before, we had no spectator space. We were able to create seating there, and really has enhanced that program. We've now had swimmers be able to compete at a national level. And one of the swimmers told me that I know well. She said, I just felt the energy of a crowd finally while I was competing. Like, this space made a huge difference on my performance. And then you can see the entrance to our sports center now, which has a presence that didn't have it before. So when you ride on campus, that's one of the first visions you see. And so what's next for us? Our next focus is really on some of the things we need to do outside. As I said, we have a concession and bathroom area that really is not adequate at all. And we started a plan that had one large concession, bleachers, restrooms, team rooms, ref rooms attached to our soccer area. And that was the original plan until about 3 years ago when we start testing it with donors. And we found out that we couldn't get enough interest because they thought it was all about our soccer program. So our hockey and lacrosse and baseball and softball donors were not as connected. And when we revisited it, we really thought, we have some other needs now. The advantage to having a plan is you can go back to it and tweak it. And so we are announcing in our public campaign this coming May, 3 small buildings that will meet the needs of restrooms in different areas of the large facility, concessions, team locker rooms, space for donors and parents to gather pre or post games. And the beauty of adjusting this plan is, one, we've increased our donor base and we've received a lead gift to start this work. 2, we can do one project at a time. So we don't need millions of dollars, we need small projects. And so my sense is that if I do one of these, that will excite people to think about the next 2 and help our development team in raising funds. So we're excited about this. We're excited to announce this and have the impact on our campus. And so for us, doing an enhancement plan really engaged the board in discussions in a way they had not been. They knew we had successful athletic programs, but they didn't understand campus wellness, what we were doing in the classroom, what we were doing about needs. We toured our old facilities and then had them meet with Derck and Edson to help think through that. A small committee had an active part in our plan, and I think, as I shared, that helped pay off. The visuals have been incredible. Renderings tell a story and a vision, and we work really hard to do our best to build what that rendering looks like, but it has made donor visits so much easier. So while we might be raising money for, at the time, the fitness center, the donor could have seen all of our plan, and they could say, you know what, I'm not a fan of the fitness center, but I am passionate about softball. And so I will help support that related to softball. And so it allowed us to increase our donor base. The other thing it did was it led us into then completing a campus master plan that we could incorporate this, tweak this, and have a solid base for it. And that master plan actually has several phases to it, and we are just about completing our first phase of that. And a lot of the athletic projects were part of that first phase. So we feel like the planning has just been a critical part. It's allowed us to be strategic in our decisions. It's allowed us to base it in some data and information versus who's the loudest, who's yelling the loudest. What we feel like we now have a campus that's attractive to students, attractive to our athletes, attractive to hiring employees that coach and teach in those areas, and has had a positive impact on our campus. So I'm going to let Eric now talk about the business plan part of it.
Thank you, Kathie. Brief overview of Eastern University. We're a small Christian college just outside of Philadelphia. We've got 3,300 trad and non-trad students on our campus, 900 residential students, which is a little lower than what we've had in the past. Currently, we have 390 student athletes, non-duplicated student athletes, over 21 different teams. We compete in the MAC, so we are friendly rivals with Messiah, and now going to be sharing that side of the conference with them in the Commonwealth. So it'd be a lot of fun to compete with Messiah. But my role in this, I started as the athletic director. I was originally the men's basketball coach at the university, so I had some pre-existing relationships in the building, and we had some transitions going on. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to serve in this capacity. So some of the stuff I'm going to talk about was already in motion with Derck and Edson, and I've kind of taken the ball and ran with it at this point, and worked alongside Steve and his team to really start implementing a lot of the thought processes. What you see here in front of you is what I was working with. This was our rec gym that you see on the right-hand side, and on the left was our fitness center. Very dated, and Kathie referenced about jokingly that she wanted to take a sledgehammer. I could tell you wholeheartedly our entire athletic department wanted to run around here with every building and hit it with a sledgehammer. So we had a lot of challenges. This fitness center served our entire campus, and to give you an idea, that was probably about, I don't know, 1,200 square feet of space. Where we've moved on to is now this vision of recreating that space. That rec gym is now our fitness center. So you have our renderings working with Steve and his team. This was the vision, and now this is actually what we're working with. We've been blessed and had a overwhelmingly positive reaction to this space. It is used by student athletes, faculty, staff, alumni, and it's basically our hub. It's our base, that first initial wave for our athletic initiative and our growth mindset here at the university, and really got the ball rolling. We're able to function on with quite a few people in that space, as similar to what Kathie had referenced. And we can have our athletics teams training and our faculty and staff using the space all at the same time without any problem whatsoever. So now in this role, we needed to create kind of that vision. We had administrative support. They were taking the lead on this and passed the baton on to me. So administrative support I inherited, which is a blessing as an athletic director. Anytime you have administrative support from day one, it's a lot easier to get things accomplished. But the biggest obstacle was getting that the board support, overall financial commitment that's needed to initiate this plan, start adding athletic teams. Steve referenced earlier all the different reasons why universities examine this plan. We basically checked every single box. We are one of those campuses that's 60-40, maybe even 65-35 when it comes to our ratios, and we're heavily female populated campus. So in order to really start to grow our facilities, we only have 2 locker rooms on our campus. We currently have 21 teams, and if we continue to grow, it would be impossible to sustain any kind of success with this initiative. So once we started to go down that road, and we'll have some renderings to show the similar to Kathie and Messiah, we were able to really gain support from my board by not only laying out a business model in place, but also showing the renderings and the growth and how it can impact. And then we needed to move on to getting campus support. Like any other campus, every campus across the country, there's always that kind of friction and divide with academics and athletics and who's getting what and where the funding's going. And when you start to look at an athletically driven growth model, it does start with some reservations across campus. So we conducted several town hall meetings with our stakeholders across campus, alumni. Everybody was allowed to tune in, ask questions to start to get that momentum going. And then as an athletic director, you got to get buy-in from your coaches and your direct staff and what you're doing. Similar to what other universities are facing, you're at Division III. We like to talk about student athletes, but at the end of the day, they're all one and the same. Your athletes are your students. That was an easy thing to sell to our nursing program, which is a nationally ranked program. Our business department, our educational department, our athletes are their students, and that's how we stay afloat as an institution, and most Division IIIs are similar. Having those conversations with your coaches on that growth mindset. We have a lot of successful programs. Our women's volleyball program is a nationally recognized program with multiple Final Fours, Sweet 16s, Elite 8 runs. They've done it. And we've been blessed to have that kind of program. Our men's soccer program is highly competitive, just coming off a Sweet 16 appearance a couple years back, and then our men's lacrosse program. So we've had similar successes that a lot of programs go through. So coaches seem to get set in their ways. We're a lot of type A personalities. And I think I got a competitive advantage in selling this vision to our coaches because I was one of them and I was in the trenches with them. We started to really examine rosters and where we currently were, where they were comfortable, and where we needed to go. Because like anything else, your coaches are going to say, yeah, I would love to have a bigger roster, but I need more money. I need to have larger budgets. I need a robust budget. I need to grow my staff. I need full-time assistants. So it's kind of a back and forth with our staff saying, you can't have any of those things. We're going to be stuck in the mud without any growth if we don't take that first step. Everyone wants the cart before the horse. It's very difficult to do at times. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So it was the growth mindset, holding my coaches accountable to that vision, setting it a specific number for every program. And we've done that. So one of the things that's really helped, and it's through the guidance of Derck and Edson, is that financial piece to this. We took the emotion out of everything. It became black and white. It became dollars and cents in order for us to really maximize our athletic department's potential. It was filling our rosters to the max capacity and then also adding these sports. And it's about the revenue we were able to generate was able to then help our operational budgets and finance these things as we've grown. But none of this is possible. You hit a limit. Every campus hits a limit, a threshold of what you can do. And our campus is no different. With 2 locker rooms operating 21 sports currently, and the growth that I'll talk about in a second, we are at our capacity. We probably got room to maximize our current teams with another probably 40 to 50 athletes. But at some point, there's a breaking point, and that was part of the sell to get board support. And then the biggest thing when you're starting to get your coaches on board is reward achievement. You know, you've got to take into account Title IX. You got to take into account all of those things that are very important, and we take serious and we apply. However, you know, I will give you some numbers. You know, we were running a baseball program with 27 athletes at one point with a $13,000 operating budget. Impossible. There was no growth there. It was not. I could understand why the coach wasn't bringing on more athletes, because they just couldn't afford to do it. And then all the pressure was on them to fundraise all the gaps. So that's into our model. If we go to the next slide, you'll see kind of now what we're looking to do. You know, we've already added our men's volleyball program from scratch. We had, like I mentioned, a very successful women's volleyball program, so it was very easy to add. We have the facilities. Yes, we only have 2 locker rooms, but we can handle that growth. You know, right now we're sitting on a roster of 14 with a goal of being at a minimum of 18 on our roster, which we'll have by fall of 21. But then now the bigger step, the next step, the big jumps is adding football and looking at wrestling. All of those sports are on the table, but it is impossible for us to add any of those until we make that commitment on those legacy projects, as Steve was mentioning, to the overall growth. And this is where we're at. We added a track team before I became the athletic director. I think I was on the second year of of the program competing. We've had, honestly, a lot of success without a track. Where our roster right now is at 70. That's kudos to our coaches. But we don't have a track. We run on the turf fields that we have. We find anywhere we can. Our cross country runs in the community. It's not ideal. We've hit our limit. There's no way we can continue to grow that program, and the potential that's there to be at 90, 100, 110, 120, depending on where you're located. We're just blessed to be just outside of Philadelphia, so it's an easier market for us to sell. But this is our vision and where we're going. As you can see, there's a full stadium that we were looking to put on our campus. There'll be locker room spaces. We are going our growth models from our current facility of 2 locker rooms up to a total of 11 to really offer what everybody's needing. Kathie referenced this. High schools nowadays have facilities that will trump majority of the Division IIIs out there. So you need to now offer a space that's attractive and appealing to help you grow your roster in this growth mindset and growth initiative through athletics. This is the vision that's really put it over the top with the board and to gain the momentum we need to move forward with our plan. We're looking to take our baseball field, and we put some money already into that complex, but to take that next step and to turf it and make it a multi-sport location. Like many institutions, we have a really hard time giving a robust experience for everyone on our campus. We do not have a robust intramural program. We do the best we can with what limited space and time we have left. So I'm sure many of you feel the same way. We will end up having an intramurals program at 10 o'clock at night and concluding at 1 in the morning, running out of a gym. That's not good for a student experience when you're thinking about their academics and you're thinking about the total experience of a college experience. The ability to offer this kind of complex with the lighting now just frees everything up. You know, right now we have natural grass on our baseball field. To be able to offer turf and have intramurals playing there during normal hours of the day will enhance your campus overall. We'll move on here. Here's another look, you know, of what we're envisioning. It's a complete overhaul, and I wish I had some pictures to show you where we're at today. This would take our program to the next level. If we keep moving through. So current successes through some of these renderings and a really deep dive into the numbers, the emotional piece, take it out of it. When I took over the position, we had a athletic department that consisted of 327 athletes. The projections of the first year of football increase our athletic participation, non-duplicated athletes up to 564. It's a gigantic jump and something that is easily obtainable if the plan is put into place appropriately. So a little bit of the cart before the horse when it comes to funding. You need to get that board support. You need to get your donors behind the vision. We've been able to do that. We've been approved for a $25 million build out, a legacy project that we're working on right now. This is not public knowledge. We have not put this out to our alumni base, so please don't start sharing football and everything else. But second, we've renovated our facilities now. Cosmetic improvements have been huge for us. The fitness center being the first, and then now we've addressed our baseball field. When I tell you it was an eyesore, we had a backstop that looked like the Bad News Bears played on it. I mean, it was broken, rusted out, overhang, terrible setup. We've addressed that, dumped about $140,000 into the facility currently. Our softball field got a complete renovation, $300,000. So we didn't make huge financial commitments yet into athletics, but we did take that first step. And I'll talk about how the numbers improved. And then our gymnasium currently, we're making huge improvements in there. We put a centerpiece video board up into our court. We have a small gym. It's a dated gym, but we have maximized every dollar that we put into it to really change the look of our campus. As I've mentioned, we started off at 327 student athletes here at Eastern when I took the position. Currently, we're at 390, and that's included during this COVID time. We have had a great partnership with our admissions team, and we've gone back and forth, and we've worked closely together on to achieve our goals. But our coaches and their buy-in is driving all of this. We have not added a sport during this COVID time outside of esports. But if I can give you numbers, we had an incoming class of traditional enrollment at 380 this year, as opposed to 335 in the past. Athletics increased our enrollment by 50% to our rosters. So there's a direct correlation to what we're doing in athletics to the growth of our institution. We had an incoming class last year of 108. We have 159 coming in this year. So our athletic initiative is highly successful so far and really been great for us. Introducing a robust JV program has been key. Our goal here at Eastern is to provide an opportunity basically for everyone on our campus to participate in athletics if they choose. And our coaches now are behind this model. We've got JV programs slated to start for baseball, men's basketball, and men's soccer currently. Women's basketball is next. Women's soccer will be looking to do the same. Softball will be looking to do the same. And what we're trying to do with that is increase our bandwidth and play against junior college competition. Give a student athlete that wants to come to Eastern the opportunity to be a part of our program. But in order to do that, you need to fund it properly. I want to give them the best experience. When I was the men's basketball coach, I grew my program when we first took over to 32 athletes, recruited athletes into our men's basketball program, but it wasn't funded properly, so it was not sustainable. That mindset now has changed, and we're funding the program accordingly. Like I had mentioned, the only sport that we had added is now this esports, and that's been fantastic. We made the announcement in December this past year. We had 10 incoming recruited athletes. The roster as a whole is up to 30. So we had a lot of students that were already here at Eastern now partaking in that sport. And then our future, the legacy project, all the slides that you saw will take us to that next big phase and that big jump in what we're trying to accomplish in adding football and wrestling. So that's going to be the driver. When you go to your board and you're going to your administration and you're sitting there, you take the emotion out of it and you show them that growth model, where we're going to go from 327 and we're going to have a goal of 564 by the time we kick off on the football field. it really drives the message home. So that's basically how we've implemented, and Steve and his team have adjusted this plan as we've gone. We've talked currently, we have another sit down next week to see where we're currently at and what we're trying to accomplish. So at this point, I am done with my section of it, and we'll open it up to anybody with questions.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Kathie and Eric, for sharing your insight on your campuses. I'd just like to encourage our attendees to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom window and hit us with your questions for the panelists. To get us going, Steve, this may be a question for you, but we've heard two really great case studies from these two universities that are in Pennsylvania. Can you just briefly touch on maybe some other institutions, other geographic areas of the country that you've worked with through this planning process?
Sure, yes. Eric and Kathie were gracious enough to participate, but they both happen to be even in the same conference. But we're working all over the country, completed athletic projects in Maine, working on one in Florida and Virginia right now. We have one under construction in Ohio, completed projects in Alabama and Arkansas and Iowa. So it really is a national effort. Just today's examples happen to be from Pennsylvania.
I think one great thing about this presentation today was obviously we got to see the perspective from two small schools. You know, the NACDA affiliates membership encompasses institutions of all sizes across the country. And so we really like to hear the small school perspective when we can. Can you talk about how this can apply to, you know, Division II and Division I institutions also?
Absolutely. And we have been doing athletics planning for all divisions across the country. Certainly, and even within the Division I, there's different levels of facilities for Division I schools. And so the principles here apply across the board, the new sports analysis as well. So we've done facilities for all of those levels. And obviously the student experience, the athletic experience is sometimes better funded at Division I, but we find sometimes the same exact challenges at all levels.
How have you seen the needs or visions of institutions change over the last 6 months during this COVID time in terms of their planning?
Well, it's interesting. Many institutions, no matter if you're an administrator or an athletic director, I think a decision exhaustion probably describes where most of you are right now. And so I've been in touch with a lot of athletic directors over the summer and trying to respond and to react to things on almost a daily basis as everybody exhausted. But I'll tell you, you know, it also in some cases here in the fall has given some individuals time to think about what could be. And so I believe right now I've had so many conversations with athletic directors about, do my locker room spaces need to change for more social distancing? Do we need to be thinking that way? And I think that for the most part, everybody's like, let's just take a pause and see where this ends up before we make those kind of dramatic changes. I will say, though, that I have not seen any letdown for schools who are looking to grow their athletics program. Obviously, it may get pushed down a year or two before we're able to bring those on, but that conversation has not seemed to slow down during the COVID situation.
Can you go over just really quickly again, so the people who are involved in the planning process, you know, when an athletics director decides to get started, who do you bring in that inner circle? Who's in the room to start the conversation and to kind of carry you through this process?
That's a great question. I probably should have touched on that. We're used to working generally with a committee. Obviously, the athletic director's there, sometimes vice president in Kathie's case, vice president of operations, or sometimes the CFO, one of the administrators sits on that as well as key coaches. We also want to make sure we have somebody who's there to represent student recreation and intramural programs to be part of those conversations. And so we're used to typically working on this kind of a committee with 3 to 8 people. We want a good cross section. At times we've even done interviews with students. We can easily do that and hear their needs, their perspective, which is always helpful. I've had a couple situations where the president on the smaller schools sits in on these committees because it's all so intertwined, as Eric really articulated well. It is all so intertwined that it impacts the entire institution. So Generally 3 to 8 people is the right size, and those are kind of the key people that we'd like to see depending upon the personality of the institution.
So for our administrators who are in the line who are interested in potentially getting this started, can we go through just, again, the timeline? It seems like there's probably a big range, right? There's like short-term planning, and then this could take, you know, years. You could be working back and forth on these types of projects. So can you give us a good starting point for people who might be interested, and then, you know, a couple different options of, you know, based on what they're looking at, what sort of time commitment they're looking at?
Well, I think as Kathie mentioned, I think the key is getting around the table for this initial 4 or 5 month process and identify short and long-term needs. And once you do that, some of the short-term projects, the athletic staff themselves can take it and run with it if there's financing available to do it. But other projects, for example, the little video I showed you of Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey, and one of the reasons why I think this planning is so important, so many times I've seen a situation, we want to bring on a track and field team and we're going to start them in 2 years. Okay, that may be great. You can hire a coach, you can get all of your paperwork done, but you may not have a facility for that. And in the case of New Jersey, the approval process with some neighbors was a huge hurdle. I know Kathie had some challenges when we did the lacrosse stadium because of neighbors and lights. And so on some of those bigger projects, we've got to really start thinking about the timeline practically to get things built. And then that's what drives bringing on the new programs. As you get into the planning process, identifying the projects, part of that conversation is realistic timelines to implement them. And some of those larger projects, and we can offer that. Obviously, municipal approvals are sometimes difficult to evaluate, but as far as construction ability, design time, and so forth, we can put some reasonable schedules even as part of that initial planning effort for each of the projects.
That sounds great. Well, we have obviously our panelists' contact information up on this slide now, so I'd encourage our attendees to reach out if you have any questions to our speakers. We have a couple minutes left. Is there any closing statements from our speakers that you'd like to leave our attendees with today?
No, just appreciate the time. Hopefully this has spawned some thought for you and you applied some of the things that you've seen here maybe to your own institution. What my experience has been is that the small investment for upfront planning plays off long-term very, very well. And as Kathie said, just because it's a plan doesn't mean you don't adjust it as you go. And in both Eric's cases and Kathie's, we're modifying, massaging the plan, but the principles that were early established are still holding true, and that's important. So it's usually worth the effort to chart this thing out and think long-term. So thanks for your time. We've had a great morning and we appreciate it.